Welcome to Unleashed, where MMA icon and power wrestling titan Dan the Beast Severn and Eric Carroll deliver a knockout punch of raw, unfiltered talk. Unleashed. Gear up. Gear up. It's beast mode.
Devin, what was that about the WWE Hall of Fame again?
I was curious with all the controversy now and with Dan Severn's impeccable reputation. We've never heard anything bad about Mr. Severn over the years. If he would accept going into the WWE Hall of Fame as, I believe, the only wrestler to hold a wrestling championship and compete in the UFC. So to me, that's definitely Hall of Fame worthy back when you were NWA champion. Would you still accept it with all the controversy, or because Vince McMahon's out now and it's different owners?
Well, I mean,
would it matter?
It's well, I'm not certain even how to even respond to that one right offhand. It's I would actually ask him even a question if that was ever to come up. I would ask some questions to ask who's even on this board of selectees. You know, depending on who's on this board of selectees, the merit of who they are, their reputations, things of that nature. Vince is just one person in that clog of machine. Now, granted, he's become front and center because of a lot of these different things that have come up, some allegations, but it's it's pretty daunting what he's facing, and who knows where it's going to come to. I've been honored in the fact that to be inducted into as many different Hall of Fames that I have, between amateur wrestling, professional wrestling, mixed martial arts. So I mean, it's should I be there? Sure. Compared, knowing some of the people that have been inducted, do I belong there? Oh, sure I do. Because there's some people that they put in there like going, you got to be kidding me. No, they have nothing to do with professional wrestling whatsoever. But I'm not sweating it really one way or the other, because it doesn't really truly affect me. If anything, my biggest thing that's happened right now is because of what you just brought up there, Devin, the fact that UFC and WWE are now underneath the same umbrella. Biggest sports merger in the history. You got a $22 billion merger between the two of them, and who was the first guy that was both a professional wrestler? Because my first profession was professional wrestling ever in my career, and that was as of the '92 Olympics, and then by '94, the UFC. So professional wrestler, cage fighter, and just like you said, the fact that I was bringing out the NWA belt to the octagon, and I mean the UFC did not want to have nothing to do with professional wrestling at the time, because they were just really promoting the violent aspect of like 2 men enter, 1 man leaves, like Thunderdome.
Well, let me ask you guys, because I've heard from several of the Hall of Famers. Devin, I know you've interviewed them. Dan, you was in there wrestling with them. I've been told, like, once you go into the Hall of Fame, there's a lot of restrictions that you have in booking outside shows and independent shows, and everything has to be ran through the WWE. Do you guys know a little more clarification on what those restrictions are?
I know nothing about that. So
I think part of the going into the Hall of Fame, like I believe the Honky Tonk Man has this, you often have to sign a Legends deal. Not everyone does, but the Legends deal is what basically puts the restrictions on you. So if you don't sign the Legends contract, you don't have those restrictions, and that Legends contract allows them to make merchandise of you and use you for appearances and so forth.
Okay.
So it kind of blocks you from doing outside projects, from what I understand, unless they approve it.
So one of the, again, Devin, this is kind of looking for your input here right now. because you've been involved in professional wrestling for as long as you have been involved with it for as well. Not a lot of professional wrestlers have got that savvy mindset of saving money for that rainy day. It's I always say it's the absolute worst industry I've ever been involved in. But if you're ever going to go into business for yourself, I would simply say you better take professional wrestling 101 and 102 because it will prepare you for the absolute worst in people. What do you think about that? Those comments there?
Yes, I do believe, particularly in the era you were in, it's a very backstabbing industry, and there was a lot of partying going on and wasting of money, and people seeing who could get the fancier cars and fancier jackets and outfits. And then we see people like Ric Flair I don't know if he's in his mid or late 70s now, but still having to work.
Yeah.
Because they didn't save their money, sadly. But it's
Yeah.
nice to see some of them like you did save their money, and you were in the UFC and WWE before these giant contracts came out that are out there today. I still think UFC has a much lower payroll though than WWE. From what I understand, that's one of the reasons UFC is more profitable. What do you think about the real sport overall pays less than the sport where you're not intentionally trying to hurt each other?
No, you're spot on. And I always tell people that I've made more money in professional wrestling than I did in the reality world of cage fighting. And I'm thinking that that's wrong. But then you look at look at all the different movie stars, especially movie stars that have come from professional wrestling. Look what The Rock is doing. Look what John Cena is doing. Look what Batista is doing. I mean, there's so many guys, even Undertaker. So many of these professional wrestlers have crossed over into the film industry because they're taking on a role. They know how to show presence, body language, facial expressions, because that's all part of telling that story. How you the music that you come out there to, the way that you posture yourself. There's so many things that I'll say that I learned through professional wrestling, because as I said, professional wrestling was my first profession. And now I'm going into the cage fighting world. It's like going, I actually took a lot of the things I learned from professional wrestling and implemented it into the cage fighting world. Again, putting out a good game face. And what I decided to wear going into that, nothing fancy, and the sweaty gray shirt, because that was representative of my amateur wrestling days, and I used to grade my workouts by how many gray shirts I would soak through during the course of a normal practice. Not the little ring that I would put around to it. I'm talking about something that was something I could just pull out the wash machine, sopping wet before going through the spin cycle. So, but that's how I came up with. I even say it now. I said, you'll get out of life what you put into it. It's called sweat equity.
Well,
even though
it worked for you.
Well, even though I'll say that we live in a very high tech world anymore, but the sad part is it's also a very sedentary world. And if you don't, I will set up my cell phone and put a timer on, so I know that it'll ring to bring me out of my trance, because I'll get that business trance where I'm just doing email after email or doing phone call after phone call, and then it's like the alarm goes off. It's like, okay, I gotta get up. Got to get out, got to get moving again, to keep that blood flow moving, or simply to step outside and do a couple little exercises, and just something different. It's when I'm out in Arizona, it's one aspect, but when I go back to Michigan, it's different, because if I'm down in Coldwater, I'll be at my training facility, where my office is located and where the kitchens or the bathrooms are located. I have to always walk through the weight room. So as I walk back through there, it's kind of like going, I must pay the price. There's a pull-up bar right over the doorway. There's a dip bar as soon as you walk through the doorway. And once you walk into the weightlifting room, there's all kinds of machines, free weights, things of nature. So I always say I must pay the price upon entry, and then I pay the price upon exiting. So I always get at least 2 reps, 2 different sets of whatever I want to do. So again, if you make, if I put on that pot of coffee and I go to that pot of coffee, there's going to be at least 10, 12 trips I'll be making back and forth there. And, coffee is nothing but a diuretic. So there's a few more trips because what comes in must come back out. So
I still remember you doing the lat pull downs in one of those first UFC
yes.
VHS tapes. That's one of my first memories of watching you.
Well, that's actually funny that you bring that up because I work out at locally here in Fountain Hills, Arizona at the Anytime Fitness. I've had a membership with them for, I don't know, 20 some odd years because I travel so many different states. There's usually always an Anytime Fitness somewhere. And I don't have to worry about hours of operation because it's open anytime. So that's what I like about the whole deal. And there happened to be a couple young men that were talking, but one was wearing a wrestling shirt. And they were talking. I could hear them talk a little bit about amateur wrestling. And I just simply said, are you wrestlers? And one happened to be more of a football player, but he also wrestled. And the other one that's all he did was just wrestling. And I was watching their weightlifting routine. And as I'm doing my own, and I said, well, let me give you a little advice. I go, replicate actual amateur wrestling moves. Think about that in your mind, these amateur wrestling moves. I go, and now replicate those same type of exercises on the various pieces of equipment. Again, like lat pull downs, seated pulls, lat pull downs. Those are bow and arrow type of cradle type of action. You use your head action usually on that one. But then seated pulls, those are singles, those are doubles. So again, I'm big on lat pull downs, seated pulls. Those are 2 really type things. Upright rowing, because those are all singles, doubles, bringing that body in, bringing that arm on in. So, and I told him, I said that I would put them through a routine if they wanted to.
Speaking of amateur wrestling, Devin, I've been following you for a while with your professional wrestling career, but I started reading up on you and I didn't know that you were an amateur wrestler as well. It looked like you had a pretty successful amateur wrestling career. What was it after being an amateur wrestler that fascinated you and made you want to get into the world of pro wrestling?
For me, I wanted to be a pro wrestler, and I got into amateur wrestling because I always heard that having a good amateur wrestling base would help you be a better pro wrestler. So that's what I did. I ended up winning the equivalent of states twice. I won the nationals in freestyle once, and I was the alternate for Greco-Roman for the London Olympic Games. So I had a decent amateur wrestling career. I never went. I should have gone to university for it. I had scholarships at University at Buffalo and Simon Fraser University in British Columbia here, but I wanted to go straight into pro wrestling. So instead, I went over to the Dungeon in Calgary and got into pro wrestling. But now I know, I didn't know at the time because they had just started the procedure, but now WWE actually recruits out of amateur wrestling. So I probably would have had a better chance had I taken the educational route and done college wrestling.
Was there anything about amateur wrestling that you saw inside of pro wrestling, or just 2 completely different worlds? I would imagine so.
No, you can do it. Particularly, I know Dan and I did some amateur wrestling at the match that we had. And if you ever run out of things to do in a pro wrestling match, if it's not a fully planned pro wrestling match, you could just amateur wrestle. And also you can protect. Sometimes people do try and take advantage of you in there, less now than when I started. And probably it was more prevalent when Mr. Severn was in there, but not that anyone would mess with him. But it's good to know how to protect yourself a little bit, I think.
No. Yeah, no, I think that, well, that's, again, I go back to what I said a little bit earlier, that the marquee says professional wrestling. We'll give them at least a little bit of wrestling. And that's where just doing a quick little go behind, pick them on up, bring them on down. If they could do like a little sit out, a little turn in, a little stand up, work the hand action a little bit there. I mean, there's some simple things I think that could be incorporated into almost every kind of a match. And I know that in my own training facility down in Coldwater, Michigan, that was what I pride myself in, was the fact that all of my athletes that were pursuing professional wrestling, they worked on actual wrestling mats first. And then as they worked on all doing all these various kinds of moves and stuff like that, again, they're still doing body slams, things of that nature, but they're doing on mats. I have a crash pad, a couple crash pads that they get to practice on the crash pads at first, so that it's not as tough on their bodies in the process. So, but then eventually they got to be able to do it inside of that ring. But then I had the moment that you're at that point that you wanted to start to do matches. I tell you, start formulating the matches now. Start learning that ring presence, how to circle, how to tie up, how to work it from the tie up positions, and then doing shows of strength and things of that nature. I can put that together, but then they would have to pass what I call blue mat matches, only because the mat was blue. But it was a mat the exact same size as a professional wrestling ring. And what you had to do is you had to walk on there with your partner, and you had to be there were two separate entrances. But you the moment you stepped on this mat, you had to be in your character, and you had to wrestle a bare bones minimum for your first match, bare bones minimum of a 5-minute match, and it had to make some sense. But you have no turnbuckles, you have no ropes, you have nothing but a mat. So again, it's not like you can say, okay, here, Eric, I'm going to whip you off the old ropes and then come in, I'm going to close you, lady, and I'm going to whip you to the turnbuckle. There are no turnbuckles. So that was very challenging to a lot of them. But, on a good note, there's been some times when they would be invited to be on a show and maybe the professional wrestling ring did not show up. And the show must go on. And so the high school, they'll roll out the rest of the mat, and most of the wrestlers are going to be lost because all of their matches are so designed for ring ropes, turnbuckles, flying this. I mean, when you look at matches nowadays, especially Devin, you watch a match nowadays, who is it climbing up on that top rope? It's so much gymnastics, high flying, but will your career be longer or shorter if you become one of those flyers?
And one of the things that turns me off as a viewer is some of these moves today. Like, it's clear you have to cooperate with the opponent to pull them off. They don't look like you could even do it in a real fight. So it just looks like two people cooperating to do some type of fancy flip, and it's not something I want to see. I want to see something that at least could be believable.
Yes. No, I totally agree. It's like looks like we're just in cooperation with each other, but at point in time, I'm going to double cross you at the end. That's really about the only significance I look at it as.
I just wanted to ask Dan one thing, because when I interviewed Dan in one of my interviews with him, he talked about Owen Hart pile driving him on his neck, and I didn't think much of it. But I was skimming through YouTube about 2 or 3 weeks ago, and I actually came upon that clip.
Yeah.
And it was almost an exact same thing of what happened with Steve Austin.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was before or after, but
I was actually after the incident there with Steve, because out of the blue, I mean, Steve called me up on my cell phone, and we didn't really have a whole lot of interaction to begin with, but he calls me up on my cell phone, and he's like, Dan, he said, this is Steve Austin. He says, I know we didn't have much interaction when we were both working for Vince and WWE at the time, and I go, he said, but a friend of mine just showed me a match between you and Owen, where he basically dropped to his butt when he did the move there to you, and he goes, he fucked up, didn't he? And I'm going, yep, he did. I took full impact on the top of my head. It would have been one thing if he would have been a big old Samoan. Samoans got these big old giganto thighs out to them. They're big, rugged, thick people. I mean, they've got these big thighs. They've got a big old butt onto them right there. If they dropped down, I would have had all kinds of real estate there. I would have never come close to being hit the top of my head. That's where Owen should drop down straight down to his knees. And a lot of wrestlers, they have that long hair, so you see the hair get crushed, but they'll never actually hit their head in the process. So, but that was scary for me, because when I did hit impact, I had a bolt of lightning run down my spine and run down my right leg. And as I laid there trying to stay in character, because that was all part of what injury angle was going to take place. So as I'm laying there quietly, I'm trying to move my fingers and see if I can still move my toes, knowing that I think I'm moving my toes, but I can't see my toes moving. But I saw my fingers moving at that point. And everything else was all put into place to where, okay, they come in with the neck brace. They're going to be putting me on a backboard. So again, I'm just trying to stay in character. But there was at one point in time where Owen did knelt down to me, and he tried to again. But he whispered, he's like, "If you're okay, squeeze my hand." Well, I did not squeeze his hand because I did not know if I was okay. But I just
wow.
So I mean, that was scary for me.
Okay, so that was supposed to be
an injury angle,
a fake injury, but it ended up being a real injury.
Yes, yeah, I know. Wow. He actually did drop me on my head. I mean, I was, once it got me through, the curtain, I got up off the backboard and I was good to go. Now again, that was something that I'll tell people, I dodged a bullet that day. That's all it was. That it was because of probably my youth, my strength, my big thick neck that I had, my bone head. I mean, all those little attributes that I was able to walk away from that. And it was I'll say it was kind of comical, because for several months I'm working for WWF at the time, but I'm unrestricted. I can work for anybody. So as they do these little video montages there with me, I've got the neck brace on. I'm moving around like this, stuff like that. But then every weekend I'm at some different professional wrestling show. But it was like this, kind of like the same old MO. The cell phone and that was not that advanced at that point in time. So I'd be at the show and I'd be showing up with my neck brace on, and how my match would always occur. I'd be going out the ring, telling folks, sorry that I will not be able to perform there tonight because of the injury I just sustained, and then the heel coming out, and then blah, blah, blah. That next thing you know, he's grabbing me and throwing me around, this, that, and the impromptu match, as I'll say, is how it came about. So that's, again, I'm trying to still somehow stay in character, but still fulfill all these other obligations at the same time. And it wasn't easy. But at the same token, I had a great attorney that negotiated the deal that I was looking for. I wanted to be unrestricted. It was like, even when the NWA approached me, they were trying to keep me. They wanted me just to wrestle just for them. I go, but okay, if there's a weekend that's coming up and you don't have me booked for, do you have a problem with me working? And they're like, well, what are you going to pay me to stay home? Well, no, we're not. I go, then I'm not going to be restricted. I go, it's common sense, because Devon, the life of a professional wrestler, you're not making a lot of money to begin with. And so by the time you start looking at what's it going to cost me to travel to this location, I got to, am I going to be able to afford enough money to stay at a local hotel? What am I going to feed myself, other than a couple quick McDonald's burgers or whatever else have you at that point in time? I mean, there's quite the balancing act that a aspiring professional wrestler has to go through, and it's all economics. I mean, you hear about that. I mean, you hear about guys that there's 2, 3, 4 of them that have to pile into a hotel room because that's all they can afford is that one hotel room, and they're all riding in the same car, even though they're going to be working against each other at the next town over. It's the the economics of it all. It's not easy in the beginning, and then you when some of the guys do get to that level, well, then they kind of forget where they did come from, and they're not saving or investing in that money, or they marry wrong. I mean, it's well, again, you bring up like a Ric Flair. I think his, I don't know, 4 marriages, 5 marriages. I mean, it's costed millions of dollars.
5.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's costing millions of dollars each time. So it's kind of like going, well, the comedic line that whenever I asked Don Fry, Don, if you were going to give any young man any kind of marital advice, what would it be? And he's like, get a prenup, get a prenup. It's always the same line, get a prenup. Yeah.
The thing about Flair too is he claims he had sex with 10,000 women. Was he even faithful one day? Like, honestly,
that's quite the agenda there. But I think that was it between him, Wilt Chamberlain, and a few of these other gentlemen that kind of fell in that category of wow, I gotta go. How'd you ever have time to get out play any basketball, stuff like that?
I wanted to bring
sadly.
I'm sorry, man. I was just to say, I wanted to bring up, we lost a legend not too long ago, and I know he was a good friend of yours, Devin. Followed you for many years. Superstar Billy Graham. I was curious, how did that friendship come about?
Yeah, well, speaking of wrestlers that sadly died broke, he would have been on that list. He only survived the past probably 5 to 10 years just from fans donating to his GoFundMe so he could get medical treatments. How did that friendship happen? I had a famous story that unfortunately, when I ended up getting signed by WWE, they found that I had Hep C in my system, which we were able to trace back from Abdullah the Butcher cutting me with a blade that he had used on himself, and we proved it in court in both Canada and the US that he had Hep C for at least 10 years before that incident where he cut me with that, which ended up costing me my contract. Billy Graham had wrestled Abdullah the Butcher about 9 times in his career, and he had Hep C as well. So when he heard about the story, he kind of reached out to me. So we kind of had that connection of that disease. And when the first treatment didn't work for me here in Canada, he had a very good liver specialist in Phoenix at the Mayo Clinic at the time, Dr. Hector Rodriguez. He got me an appointment with his doctor in Phoenix, and that doctor was able to get me on the treatment at the time that was still experimental, and I was able to take it in Canada. I had to pay for it, but the treatment ended up working, and I was able to get cured much sooner than I would have otherwise because of the delays in the healthcare system in Canada. But that's what initially made our connection.
Okay.
And we ended up just becoming very close friends. He's a very nice guy. He definitely had a lot of health issues that affected his temperament at times, but deep down he was a very nice guy. I know Mr. Severn had a very wild encounter with him that he told in one of my shoot interviews that involved an axe.
I'd like to hear it.
But
I'm actually trying to think about that right now. I was like going, oh my God, yes, okay. Yeah. Well, way before I was ever involved in professional wrestling, the cage fighting, I was working for a weightlifting manufacturing company. I was like the assistant wrestling coach at Arizona State, but my job at Arizona State as the assistant wrestling coach, I think I was making like, I don't know, $3,200 a year. So I not enough to sustain myself. So I actually had to work a full-time job, and I was working at this weightlifting company. Well, we had to make a delivery, and the delivery happened to be at an apartment complex. he didn't even own this house. Okay, so as we're getting there, this machine is not going to go through the doorway. And all of a sudden it's kind of like going, he ends up saying, let's go get an axe. He actually goes down and he borrows, I think, from like the landlord or something like that, like an axe. And then he proceeds to start to chop away at this doorway. He gets tired, and then he says, okay, I need one of you guys to do. So literally now between the other delivery guy and myself, we're chopping away at this doorway to get it big enough so we can get this cage through the front door. So that was, like I said, the wildest delivery I ever was on was, yeah.
It's safe to say he probably never paid for the damages to that door.
That was okay. He's just living in this apartment complex, and I'm like, how are they ever going to fix this door up? I was like, going, all I know is like we delivered, we're out of there. I think we should say
he told me a story once. I just have to say this because of Don Fry, that apparently Don Fry hit on his wife at one point in time when they were still together.
Billy did?
Yeah, Billy told me that story. He loves Don Fry though, but apparently Don Fry hit on his wife, and he found that very funny.
Oh, okay. Don Fry hit on Billy Graham's wife.
Yeah, at one point in time, yeah.
Oh wow. No. There's I mean, I've been on Hannibal's show there so many different times, and it's good memory though, because you've done so many different interviews. I'm actually surprised that you can even recall what from that long ago. So no, great memory that you have on that. But no, I would like to, again, it's somewhere, maybe another month or two, come back. Let's do a part 2, because we didn't even scratch the surface here, really talking about some other things that I'd like to be able to get into, because it's like what we're doing here as well. I want to try to inspire people to go after their different passions. Now, I'll probably be a little bit more negative about pursuing professional wrestling, because you better have some type of a shoot career. Again, folks, that term shoot career, it means real career, because professional wrestling does not have health benefits, does not have a 401k, and and you have a lot of people around you that are eyeing over your position on that roster, because you want to be the main eventer, because you're going to make more money as a main eventer. So when some of these guys are doing this flippity flop to the air, and you're supposed to be out there catching them, and then all of a sudden you trip and fall down, and they splat, hit the ground. It's kind of going, oh, sorry. But it's kind of like, now you're out of the lineup, and I just went up one more rung. And I've witnessed some things that's kind of going, did that happen for real, or did someone just looking out for how they're going to move up that rung? So accidents do happen in professional wrestling, but some things might be premeditated. I've witnessed both. I have witnessed both.
Speaking of, these interviews that you've done, Devin, after losing that opportunity with the WWE due to the incident with Abdullah, you can tell that you are a fan and you have a love for professional wrestling and this business. How has those interviews helped you to, be a part of this business, which I know you ran Great North Wrestling too, but this has allowed you to keep that camaraderie going. I'm just curious what that journey has been like for you.
I think it's a lot easier than wrestling, although I still wrestle from time to time. I'm dealing with an injury now, but I think it's good because the whole reason I wanted to get into wrestling was to work with people I grew up idolizing and stuff like Mr. Severn, because I was a fan of the original UFC, and like Billy Graham, who I was a fan of, and Honky Tonk Man, and all Don Fry, all these guys. I still get to interact with them, and in some cases become acquaintances with them through interviews. So I still get to work with my childhood heroes. So in a way, it's just as satisfying.
I'll put this invite there out to you. If you do make it back out to Phoenix again, did I ever take
I'll be out there again. I'll be out there again sometime.
Okay, well,
100%.
I'm just curious. Did we ever go up to the top of Squaw Peak Mountain?
We did, and I would
We,
do it again, though. We actually did an interview up at the top of
yeah,
that
they're okay.
mountain.
I was thinking it's like okay, because I knew I did an interview up there at one point in time. The hardest part is you want to make sure that you have a backpack and you have
Yeah.
lightweight equipment because you have to lug it all the way up to the top of that mountain. But that was what a beautiful because one of the things that I did recently was after taking care of hip and stuff like that. That was one of my challenges to myself is I went up to the top of Squaw Peak Mountain just so I could be up there and say, I made it back again.
All right,
Yeah,
guys.
well,
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
no, I got a long way to go before I can climb that. I'll show Mr. Severn. I was showing your co-host earlier, but if you look at my my heel right now, still got a bit of recovery to go.
Okay. The stem cells, you said you went to was it New Jersey?
Yeah, that was
Okay.
only about last week, so I still got a ways to go. But
Yeah, typically they'll say
uh,
anywhere for all the way up to what I think 6 months or longer for stem
yeah,
cells. Yeah, no, I won't talk about the one place that I end up going to, but what I am actually working in. I just want you to understand I am working in that industry, and there is only one stem cell storage facility in the entire United States, and it's located in Scottsdale, Arizona.
okay.
And we got some meetings coming up here in 2 weeks or less, where we're looking at. Think about this: if you at let's say 25 years of age, Devon Nicholson goes into this stem cell place and they extract stem cells from a 25-year-old Devon Nicholson, and then down the road at 55, 65, you start having some health issues, stuff like that. What's going to be the better match in the world than your own stem cells going right back into your body? So I think this will become a business of the future of the stem cell or banking your own stem cells. Because right now they keep using a lot of these stem cells that have been derived from C-section births, from the umbilical cord and the amniotic fluid, all this type of stuff right there. So I look at stem cells as one of the better futures of medicine, because our pharmacy companies right now are not getting a very good reputation because they're not really healing anyone. It's almost like you'll be on this pill agenda for the rest of your life, and you're really not going to have much of a quality of life on top of that.
The first stem cell injection I ever got was through your stem cell guy at the time in Phoenix. I got one in my shoulder through tendonitis, and it helped. I'm probably due for another one, but it definitely helped for several years.
Good.
Keep me out of pain.
Yep.
But I probably reactivated it.
I definitely want to talk to you for a few minutes there. Then once we go off the air there as well there too.
Yeah. So. Absolutely. I'm going to try to get in this one last question really quick. So we're going to get Devon out of here. I couldn't end this show without talking about the news of today. And we talked a little bit about it before the show. What do you guys think about the recent allegations and the crap, if you get my pun, that's coming out against Vince McMahon?
Eric, I applaud you for that one. That was a nice setup.
I was proud of that one.
Some very unusual sexual fetishes he has. Is all he allegedly has, and this is the stories related to what you just said involving the former head of talent relations, Johnny Ace, is very bizarre. It's almost you can't make this stuff up. Like, this is just
okay. You say that, but knowing that it happened in the wacky world of professionals, you know it probably did happen, though, right?
Yeah. And with all those text messages, I hope I've never heard that Vince McMahon was a drinker or anything, but you would hope that he would be intoxicated in some way to send such blatantly offensive text messages, because I couldn't imagine a sober person with a mind like his that is genius in some ways being sloppy enough to send text messages like that. If he's of sound mind, I don't know. It's very
Yeah,
strange.
I totally agree with you, Devin. That there's so much mounting evidence that it's hard. You know, what will be the future? Well, to me, it's like going. I don't even want to speculate. I'll simply just sit back and enjoy my popcorn and my beverage, and simply just watch the entertaining aspects of professional wrestling play out in front of me.
Do you think I got to ask you, Brock Lesnar? I mean, I don't really think he was that involved in this. I guess Vince kind of introduced him to this woman, and he asked her supposedly to send a video of her peeing. He never actually had sex with her or anything, but he's been like outed from WWE. UFC seems to be more open to taking people back that are controversial. Could you see Lesnar, since both companies are owned by the same people and he hasn't been released or anything, could you see him doing one more fight?
Oh, yeah, no, it's point blank. Brock moves the needle. You know, it's he's got that type of a presence that and just just his physical attributes alone. It's Dana White has well, I mean, even Dana White has kind of bent a couple rules that that he would not have done for anyone else. So it's kind of going, well, okay, it's do as I say and not as I do. So it's I'm not trying to condemn a person one way or the other. I mean, he's in the fight game, and I guess bottom line is trying to make as much money as one possibly can for the company, for its stockholders, for whatever purposes. But at the same token, it's kind of going, rules are still rules, and you kind of let yourself down, and if you don't adhere to them. So,
well, guys, I have enjoyed this interview so much. We're going to have to wrap it up. Devin, we got to have you back someday soon. Tell everybody where they can keep up with you, where they can tune in to your interviews, and how they can reach out to you.
Thank you. Yes, I'm actually doing an interview in about 5 minutes on the Hannibal TV. You can follow it on YouTube and Facebook at the Hannibal TV. There's probably at least 5 videos posted a day, including, I don't know how many interviews I've done with Mr. Severn, but probably at least 7 over the years, as well
that
as
was called
partner,
the Hannibal
Ryan.
TV. That's called the Hannibal TV.
Yeah, the Hannibal TV. I do UFO related interviews as well as MMA interviews with many MMA legends and wrestling legends. And I also give wrestling news. So please subscribe, and thehannibaltv.com is my website.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to check that out myself. So, Devin, again, it's great to see you again and to be able to interact there with you, and look forward to whether we speak off or if we get you back on. Either way, just good to reconnect, because I would like to follow back up with you on some stem cell type of things. What I'm trying to do
good
in that sector, because I'm doing things in the health and wellness sector.
You're one of the good people in wrestling. Whenever people ask me who some of the good people are, I always put your name up there. You're not a liar, and you're a very good person overall.
Well, again, I do appreciate that, because I always tell people I try to again, a lot of things I'm trying that I do, and I seek out. Again, it's selfishly is for it's for myself. It's like as what I'm talking about for the health and wellness stuff like that. I'm a 65-year-old man now. It's like going, the reality is I'm not your average 65-year-old cat there, but it's kind of going, I want to know that I'm going to be doing the exercises or the eating and drinking and whatever else I need to put into my body to give me the most quality of life that I possibly can have for as many additional years that I possibly could have, especially, cognitively wise and stuff like that. It's like going, I've been involved in quite a few matches, like going, hopefully I didn't get hit in the pumpkin too many times. Devin, again, I think I need to get off the caffeine before I get on these interviews.
Well, thank you very much. Best of luck to you guys with the podcast.